Chapter 34:17. Ah Xian. Suddenly, a young lady's slightly panting voice was heard in the midst of that profound glow. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. The frost at the bottom of his eyes also slowly melted bit by bit. Lil Luo, He spoke in a hoarse voice filled with urgency. I'm fine, don't worry about me. In order to reassure Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo's voice was filled with lightness. Hearing Yiqing Luo's voice, Dmo Xian's tensed heart finally relaxed a little. His vision shifted. His eyes were once again covered with a thin layer of frost. And it was filled with a horrifying murderous intent. His gaze was fixed on the Ghost King. TSK. Overlord is angry? Ghost King's lips twitched coldly as he wasn't afraid at all. Dmo Xian looked at him. Dmo Xian sneered as his thin lips twitched. His sleeves vibrated and the remaining might spread. Ghost King thought that Dmo Xian was infuriated and wanted to make a move on him. He immediately put on a defensive posture as he looked at Dmo Xian's actions vigilantly. Overlord, why don't we make a bet? Let's see. Will I die in your hands first or your little lover die in the hands of the earthly emperor first? His voice fell. A swift and sharp blade slashed down from the sky. The speed was so fast that he had no time to evade. Pa, that sharp blade landed heavily on his face. A line of blood appeared from his forehead to his chin. It was still bubbling with blood. But Ghost King laughed instead of getting angry. Ahaha, looks like Overlord really cares about your little lover. His laughter stopped abruptly as an icy cold intent filled his eyes. Too bad. She will die in front of me. Dmo Xian's expression was icy cold as his vision suddenly fixed on a spot behind Ghost King. His cold and thin lips slightly pursed. You want to be this lord's opponent? You're not qualified. His words had just ended. His figure suddenly blended into the air. Indistinctly, he could only see a purple afterimage flashing past. Ghost King's expression changed as he speedily dashed towards the direction of the afterimage. But before he could make any move, a few powerful forces trapped him within. Then, two old men in white robes leaped out from the crowd. When the Ghost King saw the two of them, he felt a chill run down his spine. His pupils suddenly dilated. Especially when he saw one of them. The hatred in his eyes burned wantonly. Ghost Bandit, I've finally found you. Ghost King, the person you're looking for is me. The old man looked at him with an indifferent expression. This battle, you can withdraw from it now. The Ghost King suddenly laughed maniacally. Ghost Thief, who do you think you are? Why should I give up my decision just because you appeared? Things are different now. You can no longer order me around. Holy pirate. The old man on the side, who was Gui Wu, said, bring him back and slowly reminisce about the past. Don't distract the children. The one who was called Ghost Thief was Holy Thief who lived in the World Mercenary Group. Hearing Gui Wu's words, the Ghost King suddenly thought of something. Rapidly turning his head, he looked towards the direction that was still enveloped by the profound light that filled the sky. When he saw Dmo Xian heading towards that profound ray, his eyes turned cold as he moved his feet and was about to step forward to stop him. But how would Gui Wu and Holy Pirate give him the chance to continue causing trouble? One on the left and one on the right, they quickly entangled Ghost King. At the same time, Dmo Xian's entire body vibrated with profound energy as it dispersed the dazzling profound ray. The profound ray gradually dispersed. Chapter 34:18. But among the profound rays, where was Yiqing Luo's figure? Not only Yiqing Luo. Even earthly sovereign's figure was nowhere to be seen. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's heart suddenly constricted. An ominous premonition started to spread from the bottom of his heart. He anxiously searched the surroundings as he extended his senses to the maximum. But within the radius of 100 miles, he totally couldn't sense any trace of Yiqing Luo's presence. Yiqing Luo's disappearance was noticed by Gui Wu and God Thief. They exchanged glances and looked at Dmo Xian, who was standing in mid-air with a gloomy aura, as though he was condensed with an austere aura. Why did Yi Qing Luo suddenly disappear? How could she possibly disappear under their eyelids? What on earth was going on? Earlier, wasn't he still able to hear Yi Qing Luo's voice? Or could it be? Gui Wu and God Thief's expressions congealed as their gazes fell onto Ghost King at the same time. God Thief's face no longer had the usual frivolous look as he stared at Ghost King solemnly. It's you. The reason why you appeared is because to let secluded palaces people bring that lass away. It wasn't a question, but a definite sentence. Ghost King had suffered quite a number of external and internal injuries under the duo's joint attack. Hearing God Thief's words, he propped up his swaying body as he laughed maniacally. Ha. Ha ha ha. Right. It's me. Yes, I intentionally obstructed the Overlord, intentionally giving Earthly Sovereign enough time to bring that young lady away. I'm Secluded Palace's collaborator. Isn't it normal for me to help Secluded Palace? Ha. Ha ha ha. God Thief's expression turned steely green as he hurriedly went forward and grabbed Ghost King's collar. It's really you? Tell me, where did Earthly Sovereign bring that lass to? Want to know? But I'm not going to tell you. Ghost King looked at God Thief's steely green face as he laughed even more wantonly. Ha ha ha, I've never expected. The dignified Lord Ghost Thief is actually so worried for a young lady. How ironic. Ghost King. God Thief gritted his teeth as he tugged his collar and shook it hard. Do you know how important that lass is to the Overlord? If you don't tell me where the girl is, the Overlord will. Speaking of this, God Thief took a careful look at Dmo Xian, who was surrounded by a layer of black gas. He gritted his teeth. When that time comes, I won't be able to save you either. You save me? The Ghost King couldn't help but laugh out loud, even tears came out of his eyes. You save me? This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Ha ha ha. You save me? You will save me? Ha. How ironic, how ironic. Ghost King. God Thief was so infuriated by Ghost King's crazed look that he didn't know how to persuade him to reveal Qing Luo's whereabouts. Raising his hand, Gui Wu placed it on his shoulder and shook his head. Forget it, he won't say anything. But Venerable Emperor. Holy Pirate clenched his fists. His muscles tightened. If the Overlord is still rational, on account of your relationship with Yi Qing Luo, he might spare his life. Gui Wu lightly analyzed. God Thief looked in Dmo Xian's direction. The Overlord doesn't look like he's rational. Yi Qing Luo disappeared right under his eyelids. How could Dmo Xian possibly retain his rationality? Chapter 34:19. His arrogant provocative voice stopped abruptly. What replaced it was a painful moan. God Thief had yet to react in time. The collar in his hand was left with a piece of cloth. As for Ghost King, not knowing when, Dmo Xian had already locked onto his neck and raised him up high. The man's peerless face was as cold as ice, without a single trace of emotion. A pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, as deep as an abyss, gloomy and gloomy. In his pupils, a purple glow flashed past from time to time, which made his imposing manner even more chilly. Especially the man's surroundings, which was encircled with a gloomy black aura. His entire being was like a death god from hell, Azura appearing in this world. Overlord. When he saw that man, God Thief's face suddenly turned pale. He called out to Dmo Xian carefully. However, Dmo Xian didn't even spare him a glance. Dmo Xian only locked onto Ghost King's neck as his icy cold gaze stared at Ghost King. If you want to die, I shall grant you your wish. Ghost King's face flushed red as his four limbs kept on struggling. His pair of eyes stared at Dmo Xian in terror. Overlord. Overlord. God Thief saw that and hurriedly went up, trying to hold on to Dmo Xian's arm. But before he could get near, Dmo Xian's murderous aura was emitting from his body and he was sent flying. God Thief. Ghost Marshal went up and held on to God Thief. He took a look at Dmo Xian and held on to God Thief's shoulder. If Ghost King doesn't tell us student Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts, I'm afraid Overlord will really kill him. God Thief's pupils constricted. Overlord, please show mercy. He didn't do it on purpose. Dmo Xian seemed as though he couldn't hear his voice. His icy cold gaze stared intently at Ghost King as he spoke out word by word. Speak, where did Earth's sovereign bring Lil Luo, to? The aura of death enveloped Ghost King. When Dmo Xian's icy cold eyes looked at him, he only felt as though he was being sliced into pieces. Fear occupied Ghost King's heart. He shivered and said in a hoarse voice, that was a trap set by the earthly sovereign and the palace master of the secluded palace, just to take that little girl away. Trap? Dmo Xian's eyes turned darker and more treacherous. The Ghost King's heart trembled as he looked at the azure-like death god. Especially when he saw the strange purple light flowing in the depths of the death god's eyes. His whole body trembled with fright. He was afraid of death. He was more afraid than anyone else. It had taken him a great deal of effort to find the bandits. He still hadn't gotten his revenge. He absolutely did not want to die. Even if he were to die, he would die after the bandits. The Ghost King's eyes were bloodshot as he was being strangled. He opened his mouth and tried his best to pry open Dmo Xian's hand. His mouth opened and closed, indicating that he wanted to speak. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, his icy cold gaze was as cold as ice. The thought of Yi Qing Luo and Earth's sovereign disappearing together. The minute he thought that Yi Qing Luo was not Earth's sovereign's match. The minute he thought that Yi Qing Luo might be injured. Dmo Xian's heart was filled with an inexplicable anxiety and ruthlessness. He stared at the Ghost King for some time before he loosened the strength of his fingers. On his finger, the profound dragon ring with the dragon totem was sparkling with a bright red glow. But under that glow, there was still no trace of Yi Qing Luo's presence and the profound phoenix ring's reaction. The profound dragon ring at this moment started to move uncontrollably. The flowing red glow was moving at lightning speed. Chapter 34:20. Even the profound dragon ring panicked because it was unable to sense the existence of the profound phoenix ring. Moreover, it was him. Logically speaking, the connection between the profound dragon ring and the profound phoenix ring, unless they were separated by a plane or a space, then there would be no reaction. Where on earth did the earthly sovereign bring Yi Qing Luo to? The more he thought, the colder the purple glint in Dmo Xian's eyes grew. The ruthless aura which was emitting from his entire body gradually deepened. A bloodthirsty murderous intent started to spread in his heart. His fingers, which had just relaxed, clenched tightly again. Cough. Ghost King had yet to catch his breath when he was suddenly pinched by a sudden force, causing him to cough violently. Speak. Where on earth is Lil Luo, Where is she? Dmo Xian's voice grew colder. Ghost King opened his mouth and used all his strength. It's an array. Secluded palace's array. When he finished this sentence, he almost used up all his strength. The tightness in his throat made him lose all his strength to struggle. Dmo Xian's gaze was cold and severe as his fingers loosened, allowing Ghost King to fall onto the ground. This distance was half a floor's height. The Ghost King fell heavily to the ground without knowing what had happened. His body brushed past the sharp stones on the ground. He didn't have the time to cry out in pain as he kept panting, taking in deep breaths. Speak. Dmo Xian slowly landed in front of Ghost King. His purple long robe fluttered along with the strong wind, adding a chilly and murderous aura. At this moment, the Ghost King no longer had any of the hysteria and craziness from before. His hysteria, his madness, only targeted at God Thief. Ghost King hugged his neck as his voice was hoarse as he hurriedly opened his mouth. Secluded Palace's target had always been Yi Qing Luo. You know, in the land of transformation, the palace lord of Secluded Palace wanted me to bring Yi Qing Luo back to Secluded Palace. It's the same this time. Secluded Palace made use of Earthly Sovereign's hatred towards you, to let Earthly Sovereign and Yi Qing Luo cross hands, then taking the opportunity to bring Yi Qing Luo away from the array which had been set up earlier without anyone knowing. I only delayed the time. Following Ghost King's words, Dmo Xian's arrogance became more and more subdued. The sound of his fluttering purple robe became even more resounding. Every blow seemed to strike the Ghost King's heart. That dispirited and sinister aura was like a giant wave that reached the heavens, spreading to every corner of the air. It made it harder for him to breathe. The Ghost King could clearly sense the murderous aura emitted from Dmo Xian's body. He was shocked. Dmo Xian had already raised his palm to meet his head, chopping down directly. Zun, please show mercy. Before the Ghost King could react, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. Then, he felt his body become heavy. A figure stood in front of him. Oh! A muffled groan came from the person on top of him. The Ghost King was stunned. He looked at the figure in front of him in disbelief. Saint Thief. Dmo Xian kept his palm as his cold eyes glanced at God Thief, who had rushed forward to receive his palm. God Thief's mouth was overflowing with blood, but he forced himself to stand in front of the Ghost King. This matter is Ghost King's fault. But the most important thing now is to get Last Qing Luo back. If Last Qing Luo is really injured because of this, I'm willing to use my life to compensate. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with viciousness as his profound qi overflowed. After staring at God Thief for several breaths. Chapter 34-21. The majestic and thick flame enveloped the battlefield. The surrounding air stirred up huge waves. Over at Nether Palace's side, tens of thousands of corpse puppets, under this wave, vanished into thin air. And those Nether Palace disciples were also suppressed by this wave of profound qi, as they fled in all directions. Dmo Xian was enraged. His aura continued to rise. The entire East Continent's air seemed to be distorted together. The entire space was shaking, squeezing. That palm which God Thief had just suffered, although at the crucial moment, Dmo Xian had retracted the power of his palm. But the remnant power still shook his internal organs. The pressure of this majestic aura. God Thief's body immediately swayed, as he fell backwards. Ghost Thief. Ghost King shouted this word in panic. His eyes kept staring at God Thief, whose mouth was overflowing with blood, but his face was deathly pale. His throat felt like it was being choked by an icy cold hand, making it extremely difficult for him to even breathe. Overlord. Gue Wu looked at the man who was shrouded in a gloomy aura, as he spoke indifferently. The 3,000 Peach Blossom side has already found out the real location of Nether Palace. If you rush over now, you should still be able to make it. Saying that, Gue Wu's palm moved. A piece of leather floated in midair. Dmo Xian's deep eyes were suffused with a biting cold glint. He stretched out his hand. The leather followed the profound wave, as it fell into his palm. He swept a glance at the map, as his deep and cold peach blossom eyes looked at Gue Wu coldly. Is this true? Peach's ability, you are very clear. Facing Dmo Xian's penetrating aura, Gue Wu's expression was still calm and indifferent. Dmo Xian's 5 fingers which were holding the map tightened. Leave this place to us, this calamity of Nirvana realm, we are already involved in it, we will not sit back and do nothing. Gue Wu said indifferently. The purple light in Dmo Xian's eyes was like the turbulent waves of the undercurrent, surging wave after wave. A few breaths. Without any hesitation, his figure stretched out, and turned into a remnant shadow, disappearing. Where did Overlord go? Overlord and Madam Emperor have left, then what should we do? The various powerhouses watched as the 2 saviors disappeared from the battlefield. He could not help but feel a sense of fear. There were also many conspiracy theorists who spoke in fear, Did His Majesty and Madame D run away? They couldn't defeat the army of the land, so they abandoned us and fled? As soon as these words left his mouth, regardless of whether it was true or not, everyone's hearts were shaken. For a time, everyone in the Nirvana realm was in a state of panic. Earlier, because of Dmo Xian's rage, the joy of dispersing those 10,000 corpses had suddenly vanished. What nonsense are you spouting? When Yan Xiaoyi heard this, she immediately raised the black sickle blade in exasperation and slashed in the direction of the conspiracy theorist. Are you all blind? Qing Luo was brought away by the Earth Emperor's scheme. What escape? Can't you see that our world mercenary group's people are still here? Can't you see that Qing Luo's war pets are still here? The representatives of the conspiracy theorists were so shocked that they took a few steps back. He wanted to argue, but looking at the aggressive Yan Xiaoyi, and behind Yan Xiaoyi, the unfriendly faces of the young men and women, he was stunned, not daring to say a single word. Even if Qing Luo and Overlord are not on the battlefield, but similarly, the Earth Emperor is not on the battlefield, so the collaborators of the secluded palace will not continue to fight. Long Yunzhan's icy cold voice rang. Chapter 34:22. This battle, no matter if Qing Luo is here or not, no matter if the Overlord is here or not, we must carry on with the battle. Even if we have to drag it out, we have to drag it out till Overlord and Qing Luo join hands to destroy the Palace of Abyss base. Long Yunzhan was the leader of the World Mercenary Group. His words were naturally more convincing than Yan Xiaoyi's or anyone else's. In addition, Long Yunzhan was as cold as ice. This chill was able to dispel the fear in everyone's hearts, especially after hearing the words "destroy the base of the Palace of Darkness." They were even more convinced. Just now, the conversation between the Overlord and Master Guiwu had been heard clearly by those who were standing nearby. The Overlord took the map of the Palace of Darkness and went to the Palace of Darkness. If the base of the gloomy palace was destroyed, then the Nirvana realm could be saved. That's right. Even if they had to stall until the Overlord destroyed the base of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. The other side. Yi Qing Luo felt a splitting headache. Because of this sharp pain, her consciousness became much clearer. She slowly opened her eyes. What entered his eyes was a dark hall. The hall was empty. There was nothing on display. A cool breeze caressed their faces, and the entire palace gave off an eerie feeling of emptiness. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her head as she surveyed her surroundings. He was a little confused. Where was he? She slowly sat up straight, her head still throbbing with pain. She frowned as she recalled what had happened before she fainted. That's right. She had almost been enveloped by the sword wave released by the earthly sovereign and was in a dilemma. Fortunately, Xian Gui was there to protect them. Xian Gui's hard turtle shell could resist the sword waves of the earthly sovereign perfectly. Because of this, she wasn't affected by the sword wave. However, the profound light released by the sword wave was indeed a little too dazzling. She could only listen to the sound to determine what was happening outside of the sword wave. Ah Xian, she heard Ah Xian's voice. She heard the sound of Ah Xian being stopped. He also sensed Ah Xian's anger. She was worried that Ah Xian would be too worried, so she tried to calm him down. However, just as she finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, he felt a strong suction force coming at him. Then, a white light flashed before his eyes. Boundless sword waves engulfed her. Then, she lost consciousness. Then, when she opened her eyes, she found herself in an unfamiliar and empty hall. Master. Suddenly, he heard an extremely soft sound beside his ear. Yi Qing Luo felt that her ears were starting to itch. She raised her hand and touched it. Then, he felt something hard. He held it in front of his eyes. It was actually a miniature version of Xian Gui. The size was about the same as Yi Qing Luo's palm. It was a green tortoise. However, There were two snake-like and dragon-like creatures coiled around the tortoise shell. This style, he looks familiar. Where have I seen him before? Master, this place is shrouded in a very gloomy qi. Staying here for a long time will pollute your heart. Xian Gui's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's contemplation. Indeed. The atmosphere here was very stifling. After breathing for a long time, he could feel a slight chill in his body. She put Xian Gui on her shoulder and propped herself up. His body was still a little weak. The stinging pain in her head became more obvious because of her movements. Chapter 34-23. But after a round of searching, Yi Qing Luo discovered that there was no exit in this palace. The entire palace was like a cage. Other than the two large skylights on the roof, Yi Qing Luo didn't find any place that could connect to the outside world. She tried to slip out from the skylight. But the moment she got close to the edge of the skylight, Old Man Sung reminded her nervously, "Backlash barrier. Lass, the person who set up this barrier is much stronger than you. You can't get close to this barrier." Backlash barrier? Yi Qing Luo had heard of this kind of barrier. It could be said that it was an extremely insidious barrier. If it wasn't someone with stronger ability who could forcefully break the barrier. If the trapped person wanted to escape from the spirit formation, he would be able to escape. The moment she touched the barrier, there was an 80% possibility of being swallowed by the backlash barrier. In other words, Yi Qing Luo was completely trapped in this palace to death. Who was it that trapped her in here? What was the purpose of trapping her in here? Could it be Earth's sovereign? Or this was another conspiracy of the secluded palace? Yi Qing Luo, who was deep in thought, suddenly felt a dull pain in her brain. Her petite body swayed and immediately knelt on the ground. She held her forehead with one hand and pressed it hard. "Master," Xian Gui said worriedly, "the atmosphere here is getting gloomier and gloomier." After a long period of breathing, no matter how strong Master's willpower is, I'm afraid you can't resist the pollution of this atmosphere. Xian Gui's voice lowered, revealing some guilt. If the one beside Master is Vermilion Bird, it must have a way to wash away the gloomy atmosphere here. Yi Qing Luo's breathing paused slightly when mentioning Vermilion Bird. Indeed, if Qi Yen was here, its blazing flame could purify the dirty atmosphere here. But unfortunately, before she fell into a coma, she only remembered that Xian Gui, who was standing in front of her, suddenly bit her sleeve. And then, when she woke up, there was only Xian Gui beside her. And the other battle pets. They didn't follow her back to the pet space. But it was good that Shiju, Qi Yen and Azure Dragon didn't return to the pet space. This also meant that they stayed on the battlefield in the East Continent. There were 3 sacred beasts and an evolving panther dragon on the battlefield. The Nirvana realm would have a higher chance of winning. Don't blame yourself. Yi Qing Luo gasped lightly, "With you around, I have another layer of protection." Xian Gui's turtle shell was extremely hard. Compared to the barrier that could withstand attacks, it was much sturdier. In this strange place, there was such a safeguard. That way, she would be able to block the fatal damage and have more opportunities to counterattack. Yi Qing Luo adjusted her sitting posture and slowly sat on the ground to rest. She shook her head vigorously. He wanted to shake the dull pain in his head to the back of his mind. "Little girl, it seems like someone intentionally wants to trap you here and use this filthy baleful aura to pollute your heart and control you." Old Man Sung's voice rang out. His voice was like a source of warmth, soothing the dull pain in her head bit by bit. Yi Qing Luo held her head and didn't reply. The atmosphere in the palace was getting gloomier and gloomier. It was full of baleful aura. He just walked around the palace a little. She didn't just have a dull headache. Even her heart was somewhat chaotic and impetuous. This was the purpose of the other party to trap her here? Chapter 34-24. Could it be? Was it the Palace of Darkness? A long time ago, the dark forces wanted to make use of the profound Yin-Chi to control her consciousness. The dark forces joined the Palace of Darkness because both parties had the same goal. Then, there was a possibility that the Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness to achieve some kind of goal. Recalling the conversation between Ghost King and the Palace Lord of the Palace of Darkness. They had mentioned it before. What the Palace of Darkness wanted was this body of hers. No matter what method they used, as long as she was still breathing, it would be enough to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. That's right. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. The Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness so that she would willingly become the vessel of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. And the Palace of Darkness wanted to use her to find the Divine Emperor's tomb. The Palace of Darkness's motive right from the start was these 2 points. Yiqing Luo, who understood the Palace of Darkness's motive, clenched her slender fingers tightly. If that was the case, all the more she could not be influenced by the surrounding Yin-Chi. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes forcefully, to make her consciousness clearer. Because in the past 10 over years, as the young matriarch of a hidden family in the 21st century, the training she had undergone was unimaginable. Her willpower was much higher than ordinary people by several times. But even for her, sitting in this hall, not only did Xiao Chen have a splitting headache, even his heart felt vaguely irritated, an indescribable feeling of irritation surging into his heart. She used all her strength to control the evil fire in her heart. Her slender fingers clenched tightly into her palm. Her round nails were embedded into her flesh, imprinting a crescent arc shape. Using the prickling sensation to stimulate her consciousness. Master, I seem to see a ray of light. Xian Gui, who was on her shoulder, leaped up and speedily dashed towards the center of the palace. Xian Gui. Yiqing Luo called out but didn't get any response from Xian Gui. She could only prop herself up and walked towards the direction where Xian Gui was dashing towards. Perhaps the Yin-Chi in the palace was getting thicker and thicker. Or perhaps she had breathed for too long in this palace, causing the Yin-Chi to enter her body. Even a simple walk was extremely strenuous for her. Master, look here. Xian Gui's voice was filled with excitement. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and quickened her pace. She followed Xian Gui's voice and found his position in the dim hall. The small one was squatting in the corner of the hall. A thin beam of light shone on the 2 snakes and dragons on Xian Gui's back. It flickered between light and dark, making the 2 small things look even more treacherous and eerie. Light? There was actually a ray of light in this corner? If it wasn't for the fact that Xian Gui was so small and happened to see it. Even if she was locked up for decades, she might not be able to discover the problem with this corner of the wall. She stooped down and used the glowing flame fan to create a wind blade that swept towards the corner of the wall. Then, he cautiously picked up Xian Gui and took a few steps back. The wind blade hit the corner of the wall. Boom! A loud noise was heard. The wall suddenly broke into pieces and collapsed. Yiqing Luo was stunned. What was going on? Wasn't this a cage specially made to trap her? And even specially set up a backlash enchantment? This wall. How could it collapse so easily? Yiqing Luo expressed a dumbfounded look. Boom boom boom, the rubble on the wall fell to the ground. The dust rolled and gradually dispersed. There was not an exit behind the collapsed wall. Chapter 34-25. It was unknown what kind of brick the wall was made of, but the engraved murals were extremely clear. Yiqing Luo sensed for a moment. After confirming that there was no danger, he took a few steps forward and examined the murals on the wall. The light here was too dim. In addition, the carvings on the wall were very messy. Yiqing Luo looked at it for some time before she could vaguely see. It looked like a human-shaped mural. On the mural, there were 5 small objects that looked like jewelry floating around the human figure. On the other side of the mural was a complex totem. The lines were messy and complicated. No matter how she looked at it, Yiqing Luo couldn't understand what that totem was. These murals, he heard Old Man Song's surprised voice. Following that, Yiqing Luo's wrist felt hot. Old Sung floated out from the azure dew bracelet. He was now in his corporeal form. He was dressed in a white robe, and he was extremely eye-catching in the dark palace. He rushed to the front of the mural and raised his trembling hand, wanting to touch the human-shaped totem carved on it. But the finger is about to touch the mural. Then, he retracted his arm stiffly. However, his eyes were still fixed on the mural. It was as if he was reminiscing about something through the murals. Old Man Sung. Yiqing Luo walked to the back of Old Man Sung and looked at his expression. You know what's carved on this mural? Old Man Sung's hands slowly hung at his side. He stared intently at the mural, and the expression on his face was somewhat moved. The figure on the mural is the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Old Man Sung's voice was somewhat trembling. If one looked closely, I can see that. As he spoke, even his body was trembling slightly. This was excitement and nostalgia. The Emperor of the God Emperor, these 4 words had completely shocked Yiqing Luo. Isn't that the legendary monarch of the divine monarchs? How could the Emperor of a divine emperor be carved on a wall in the form of a mural? I can't be wrong. This is the Emperor of the divine emperor, and these. Old Man Sung raised his hand and gently stroked the 5 small things floating beside the human-shaped totem. Do they look familiar? Familiar? This kind of abstract carving. Yiqing Luo could only vaguely see the outlines and shapes of these carvings. She stared at it for a while. Suddenly, his eyelashes trembled. His finger pressed on one of the small things. Unlike Old Man Sung, she was still separated by air and did not dare to touch him. Instead, he placed his hand completely on top of it. This is the azure water ring? Yiqing Luo's hand pressed on the totem suspended above the head of the human totem. That carved little thing in her azure water ring, whether it was the shape, the outline, or the size, all perfectly matched. Then, she brought her wrist down. That totem that was like a thin line, as expected, also overlapped with the azure water silk chain. Vast water artifact, this mural depicted the Emperor of Divine Emperors and the blue water divine artifact. That's right. Old Man Sung looked at Yiqing Luo's hand and the mural with a burning gaze. After a long time, he furrowed his white eyebrows. But, why would there be a portrait of the Divine Emperor and a portrait of the azure water divine artifact here? I'm afraid this place is no longer the Nirvana realm. It was impossible for such a mural to appear in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand. Her fingertips swept over the profound phoenix ring. From the beginning, she realized that this place might not be within the boundaries of the Nirvana realm. Chapter 34-26. The connection between the profound phoenix ring and profound dragon ring, unless they were separated by a plane or a space. Otherwise, it was impossible to lose its reaction. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up and down at the mural. Why is the totem of the Emperor of God carved in this palace? Then, the totem opposite the Emperor of God, what is it carved on? Old Man Sung slowly shifted his gaze onto her. His gaze was deep and gloomy. That is, the Emperor of God's tomb. The Emperor of God's tomb? Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. She frowned slightly as her eyes were filled with astonishment. The portrait of the Emperor of God, the portrait of the vast water divine weapon and the Emperor of God's tomb. Old Man Sung's expression turned solemn. Looks like the other party's motive of trapping you in this palace is because of the Emperor of God's tomb. Listening to Old Man Sung's words, Yiqing Luo linked it back to those guesses which she had told the mistress of the Palace of Seclusion. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk. This is the Palace of Seclusion's turf. You're indeed the lady who made the Overlord and my disciple head over heels for you. You're indeed intelligent. Suddenly, a cold voice was heard from all directions in the palace. That voice was so cold that it made one shudder. Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings alertly as she extended her senses to the maximum. But she still couldn't sense any other aura. She couldn't even tell which direction the voice came from. That voice seemed to be very close, yet it seemed to be extremely far away. More accurately, that voice was illusory, as though it had enveloped the entire palace. You are. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her eyes were vigilant and icy cold. Her vision swept through the surroundings once again. She then slowly spat out a sentence, word by word, Palace of Seclusion. The real mastermind behind the scenes. Heh. That cold and gloomy voice laughed sinisterly. That cold and treacherous laughter made Yiqing Luo's scalp go numb. Controlling the Palace of Dark Seclusion behind the scenes, finding countless people with high status in the upper realm to help the Palace of Dark Seclusion. He even stopped the people from the upper realm from intervening when they invaded the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a faint smile. Since your status is noble and your ability is powerful, why must you persist on scheming against a lower realm young lady like me? The smile on her lips was full of disdain. Don't you think it's degrading? Miss Yi. I really appreciate your praise. The laughter of the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness became even more ethereal and eerie. You're right. I do have a noble status and powerful strength, but what I want is not just this little bit of status. Perhaps he was too confident in himself. Perhaps it was because he was certain that Yiqing Luo would lose her sense of self in this hall. The person behind the scenes of Gloomy Palace was very honest. He patiently answered Yiqing Luo's question. Hearing the other party's reply, Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed a glint of darkness. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. You want to become the Emperor of the Divine Emperors? She asked. The Emperor of the Divine Emperors? The person behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness gave a disdainful smile. If I am able to obtain the inheritance of the Emperor of the Divine Emperors, I will be the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Adding on to my ability. What does the Emperor of the Divine Emperors count for? The minute these words were spoken, Yiqing Luo was completely shocked. Chapter 34-27. Wasn't the ambition of the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace a little too big? The other party was actually thinking of to dominate the upper realm? Was this the rhythm of wanting to be the master of the world? Even if the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace wanted to be the master of the world, and had the ability to become the master of the world, the law of Heavenly Way would not allow one person to control all the planes, the entire world, or even the universe. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the so-called upper realm, Nirvana realm, and other levels of distribution of the various planes. All the planes were mutually restricting and mutually balancing each other's existence. As though he could read Yiqing Luo's thoughts. That person laughed sinisterly again. As long as I have absolute ability. Even if Heavenly Way does not allow it, I will go against the heavens. Why can't I? That arrogant tone was filled with self-confidence. As though everything was in the palm of his hand. Yiqing Luo frowned. Since your target is me, the vessel that I, the Divine Phoenix Profound Jade Heart, why? Still want to destroy Nirvana realm? It's just a waste plane, a bunch of waste existing in this world, it's just a waste of resources. That person's tone was filled with disdain. I want to rebuild this world. From that person's words, Yiqing Luo could roughly guess the other party's character. That person was not only confident, but also extremely arrogant. To put it bluntly, that person wanted to be the creator god of the world. He wanted to control the entire world in his own hands. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, that person laughed arrogantly, calling out Yiqing Luo's name. That sinister and treacherous tone. It made Yiqing Luo's scalp go numb. She congealed her senses, scanning the surroundings alertly, but didn't reply. Immediately following that, she heard that illusory voice, sounding sinisterly, "You make me very surprised." Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. This sentence was absolutely not considered as a compliment. but even if it was a compliment. Being complimented by this kind of person was even more disgusting than seeing that person eating *T. A low-grade waste plane, I thought, it should be easy to rebuild. But because of you, it caused my plan, time and time again, to be destroyed. That person's tone rose slightly. There was even a hint of deeper meaning in his tone. A low-grade trash plane caused me to suffer such heavy losses. Tell me, how should I punish you? Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes trembled slightly. She tried her best to restrain the turbulence in her heart. He had to maintain a calm and indifferent expression on his face. Especially at this time. She couldn't afford to panic. Once she panicked, his aura would weaken. This would definitely give the other party a chance to take advantage of it. The other party was the mastermind behind the Dark Palace. It was also rumored that he had a very high status in the upper realm. His strength was so strong that it made people tremble in fear. If the other party wanted to take her life, he could do so with a flick of his finger. She could not panic. He had to remain calm. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath as her pink lips curled upwards, curling into a cold arc of ridicule. A thin layer of frost covered her long and narrow eyes. Before we find the Divine Emperor's tomb, you won't punish me. Her voice was flat and emotionless. It was as if she was certain that the other party wouldn't do anything to her. The indistinguishable voice paused for a moment. As though he had not expected Yiqing Luo to reply in this way. Several breaths later, that person started laughing. The sinister laughter was like circle after circle of ripples, rippling out in the hall layer by layer. Chapter 34-28. Yiqing Luo, what makes you think that this seat will not punish you? That man laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with ridicule. You've made this seat see you in a different light. There aren't many people who can remain so calm in front of this seat. That man's laughter stopped abruptly. The next moment, that man's voice turned gloomy and cold for no reason. Too bad, your self-righteous reliance is useless. In the palace, the gloomy aura started to surge. Every time Yiqing Luo took a breath, she could feel a gush of coldness seeping into her body along with her breath. What this seat wants is your body and that divine phoenix profound heart jade of yours. As long as you're still breathing, that's enough. That man laughed lightly. This seat has 100 ways to let you be tortured and still keep your last breath. Yiqing Luo. It seemed that all arrogant people had the heart of Yap Liangchen. Yiqing Luo wasn't frightened by that man's words. She didn't feel any discomfort from the dense yin qi in the surroundings. Her expression was still that calm and composed. Back then the King of Darkness also wanted this divine phoenix profound heart jade of mine as a vessel. That man didn't reply. As though he was curious. Why did Yiqing Luo mention the King of Darkness at this moment? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled. The real palace lord of the secluded palace, what you want, is also this vessel of mine. So? That man was curious. Yiqing Luo raised her fair hand and pressed on her heart as she gave a low laugh. You. A person with such great ambitions, you shouldn't waste your time on me. A young lady from the lower realm. But, you trapped me in this palace and used evil methods to pollute my heart, and even specially appeared. It seemed that you appeared because I sensed the totem on the murals in this palace. But in actual fact, you're merely using your words to bewitch me, messing up my inner heart. You're also delaying time, so that the evil chi here can control my consciousness and soul. Speaking of this, Yiqing's smile revealed some confidence and trust. If I'm not wrong, you should know that Xian is on his way to save me. You're worried that Xian's appearance will ruin your plan today. Yiqing Luo's analysis was logical. From start to finish, that person did not make a single sound. There was no rebuttal, no acknowledgement. It was as if he had disappeared. But Yiqing Luo knew. The man was still there. He did not refute or admit it. It was only because she had guessed correctly. A truly powerful and arrogant person. It was disdain to lie to a little girl from the lower realm like her. So, she guessed right. That person would not retort. Yiqing Luo didn't bother whether that person would reply or not. Immediately after, he continued, both of you want the divine phoenix profound heart jade and also want this vessel of mine. This also proves that this divine phoenix profound heart jade is something that neither the king of darkness nor you can control or use as you wish. In other words, apart from me, no one else can unleash the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. This is also the reason why one of you wants to use the profound Yin Qi to control me, while the other wants to use the evil Qi to control me. She raised her head as a calm glint circulated in her long and narrow eyes. Chapter 34-29. Yiqing Luo's last word fell. The entire hall was silent. So quiet that the sound of the wind blowing the dust on the ground could be heard. Yiqing Luo maintained her smile and did not continue to speak, quietly waiting for the other party's reaction. The quieter the other party was, this meant that what she had analyzed was correct. This also meant that she was in control of the sovereignty. Just like this, the silence lasted for about half an incense stick of time. In the air, an extremely soft, almost inaudible laughter was heard. Yiqing Luo is indeed the chosen master of the divine phoenix profound jade heart, really smart, makes one want to destroy you. Accompanied by the laughter was that person's sinister voice. Are you sure you want to destroy me? Yiqing Luo smiled. That person laughed even louder. Good. Very good. Yiqing Luo, you can indeed be arrogant now. Wait till I dig out the divine phoenix profound jade heart along with your heart. I will make you wish you were dead. This sentence was also an indirect acknowledgement. The other party could not touch her now. What she was sure of, speculated, analyzed, all of it. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly. I will wait and see. Humph. This word floated in the air. Immediately after, there was silence again. The quieter it was, the more strange the atmosphere. A trace of danger filled the entire space. Old Man Sung and Xian Gui moved and quickly blocked in front of Yiqing Luo, full of vigilance. It's all right, that person has left. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief and slowly sat cross-legged on the ground. Left? Old Man Sung turned around and looked at Yiqing Luo. The girl's face was full of exhaustion. Where was the confidence from earlier? Lass, if that person is really the mastermind behind the secluded palace, that means that person is from the upper realm. Most likely someone from the heaven realm and above. If you provoke that person like this and really angers him, even Old Man Sung and Xian Gui can't save you. Old Man Sung thought of the scene where Yiqing Luo angered that person and his heart jumped. That person is from the god realm. Yiqing Luo leaned against the wall and rubbed her brows hard. That person's ambition was to become the creator of all things in the world. He wanted to become the ruler of the world. Such an ambitious person. It was definitely impossible for him to be someone from the heaven realm. The god realm. Old Man Sung's complexion suddenly darkened. Yiqing Luo raised her head and heavily exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. If we don't infuriate him, it's impossible for him to leave this place and will be in even more danger. She could feel it. While talking to that person, the stabbing pain in her head became more and more obvious. Just like what she had just analyzed. The man was talking to her. He was simply bewitching her heart. Her willpower was gradually diminishing. If she hadn't figured out that person's motive, she would have died. I'm afraid, there's a high possibility that that person's plan will succeed. The Palace of Tenebrous Darkness wants Master's profound heart jade and Master's body. At least, before they need Master's profound phoenix heart jade as a vessel, Master will be safe. Xian Gui moved closer to Yiqing Luo and comforted her. Yiqing Luo touched its tortoise shell, but if I continue to stay here, no matter how strong my willpower is, I might still be contaminated. She shook her aching head and caressed the profound phoenix ring with her fingertips. Chapter 34-30. But, as time went by, Yiqing Luo breathed more and more yin qi. Her whole body was not only cold to the point of almost oozing a thin layer of frost. Her head also seemed to be pierced by a thin needle. She was trembling from head to toe. Old Man Song and Xian Gui kept talking to her. This was not the worst. As time went by, Yiqing Luo could even feel that the power in her body was gradually fading. The azure dew chain on her wrist and the azure dew ring on her fingertips were emitting scorching heat. It should be that her body was getting weaker, causing her body to be unable to withstand the power of the two divine weapons. After the power of the divine weapons gradually faded, it was even more strenuous for her to resist the evil yin qi around her. She couldn't sit still and wait for death. But now, even moving was extremely strenuous for her. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo's sharp ears moved. Xian Gui's small body suddenly became big and blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. What's that sound? Old Man Song stood up and looked ahead vigilantly. Vaguely, he seemed to hear a slight sound coming from the hall. Then, the sound was getting closer and closer. A ray of black light suddenly flashed. In front of her, two figures appeared out of thin air. Those two people were shrouded in a cloud of dense black qi. Their eyes shrouded in black qi were flashing a cold light. You? Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly when she saw the two people clearly. One of them, a thin but tall man, slowly walked forward. The cold and gloomy voice carried a chill that made people shudder. Yiqing Luo, long time no see. Yiqing Luo's pupils were fixed on that person. The man's age was about 40 or so. That face was so thin that there was only skin and bones left, looking extremely mean and penetrating. Especially the black qi emitting from his body. It made him look more and more gloomy and horrified. He licked his dry lips, his eyes filled with a crazy smile. Yiqing Luo, I always want to peel off your tendons, peel off your skin and drink your blood. He walked forward slowly. As her words left her mouth, the black qi on his body became even more intense. That was all hatred and malicious intent towards Yiqing Luo. Pharaoh you actually degenerated yourself to become a corpse puppet. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her penetrating gaze sized up the middle-aged man in front of her. Ever since the battle on the West Continent, she had never seen Pharaoh Crane before. To be more precise, she had never seen the three pharaohs who had escaped from the dark forces. Only a few saint techniques worked for the Dark Nether Palace and were rather active. Unexpectedly, he would meet Pharaoh He again here. Yiqing Luo could sense that Pharaoh He's aura had changed. It was not just the aura. His movements were thick, sinister, and cold to the extreme. I just want you to die. Pharaoh Crane's mouth twitched maliciously. As long as I can avenge die, I don't care what I do. Clearly, Pharaoh He had fallen into madness. His sinister eyes suddenly turned to look at the man beside him, who was also overflowing with evil aura. Si Yenmu, this is your enemy, do you see it? Pharaoh He's voice was cold and filled with bewitchment. Your Asyang died in her hands. If you want to avenge your Asyang, this is the only chance. Beside Pharaoh He, that man who was also overflowing with sinister aura. Chapter 34-31. The former president of the Heavenly Academy Faculty Council. Later, in order to follow Xiang Xingfa, he joined Si Yenmu of the Netherworld Palace. Last time, in the secret base of secluded Abyss Palace in the South Waves continent, Si Yenmu took advantage of the chaos to escape. She thought that it was because Si Yenmu had brought them to the secret chamber to refine the dead corpse puppets. He had caused such a huge disaster. The Netherworld Palace would definitely not let Si Yenmu off. Unexpectedly, Si Yenmu was still alive. No, to be more precise, he couldn't be considered alive. Because now, Si Yenmu had also become a corpse puppet. But what surprised Yiqing Luo was that Si Yenmu's aura was much weaker than Pharaoh He. It felt like Si Yenmu was not a successful new type of corpse puppet. However, Si Yenmu seemed to have his own consciousness and was not considered a semi-finished product. I want to avenge Ah Xiang. Si Yenmu also took a step forward and walked side by side with Pharaoh He towards Yiqing Luo. How did you two get in here? What are you trying to do? Old Man Song and Xian Gui saw the both of them taking action and immediately blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. Based on Yiqing Luo's current physical condition, she was unable to engage in battle. Pharaoh He raised his hand and pointed directly at Yiqing Luo. I said, I want her life. Si Yenmu was also filled with hatred as he stared at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He did not intend to explain to Si Yenmu. Back on the battlefield, the one who killed Sacred Art Elephant was Butterfly's Sacred Art. Si Yenmu would not believe it even if she told him. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to explain to Si Yenmu. She half-crossed her legs and rested her arms on her knees. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the two of them quietly. That posture, that appearance. She was so lazy that it didn't seem like she was facing an enemy who wanted her life. She curled her pink lips and smiled calmly. You are the people behind the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. They let you in, right? So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Pharaoh He was smiling, but his eyes were filled with malice. If that's the case, then I can be at ease. After all, none of you would dare to kill me. Yiqing Luo smiled confidently as the corners of her lips curled into a faint cold arc. If not, I'm also very assured, because you can't kill me. Pharaoh He's face darkened, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. Are you so sure that you won't die? Your boss can't bear for me to die. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as she raised her other hand and gently caressed her own face. No matter what, I'm still as beautiful as a flower, devastatingly beautiful. If I die, the world will lose a beautiful lady like me. Isn't that such a pity? You. Pharaoh He was infuriated by Yiqing Luo's shamelessness. He clenched his fists tightly. His entire body was shrouded in a sinister aura, like a flame, constantly burning. Even that pair of sinister eyes was filled with a terrifying black light. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. Facing the infuriated Pharaoh she was still that calm and indifferent. Actually, he could guess it. The hall was surrounded by a backlash barrier. These two people must have been sent in by the people behind the Palace of Darkness. His goal, of course, it wasn't to take her life. But it was much crueler than taking her life. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she leaned against the wall, trying to clear her mind. After that, she maintained her composure as she continued with a smile. Looks like Ah Xian will be here very soon. Your boss is so anxious that he threw any Tom, Dick or Harry here. Chapter 34-32. I'm talking about whoever replied. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Si Yenmu's face was filled with anger as his eyes shot out a chilly evil chi. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold Yiqing Luo. But Pharaoh He raised his hand and stopped his words. Si Yenmu's insulting words were stuck in his throat. His handsome face was flushed red. Pharaoh He looked coldly at the calm Yiqing Luo and said indifferently, Yiqing Luo, has anyone told you that this mouth of yours and your character makes it easy to be taken advantage of? He carried a high and mighty attitude as he looked down at Yiqing Luo who was leaning against the wall. The disdain in his eyes and the hatred that he was determined to get what he wanted were constantly burning. Yiqing Luo tilted her head and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Seems. No. Then I shall be the first to tell you, and I shall use my actions to tell you. Pharaoh He's gaze was sinister as he took a step forward. His thick profound energy and the evil energy surrounding his body suddenly rose sharply. Tom, Dick, and Harry? He laughed sinisterly. How does it feel to die in the hands of the Tom, Dick, and Harry? Yiqing Luo, you're just an immobile waste now. Do you need me to teach you how to live longer? Look at that pretty face of yours. if you give in and say a few good words, I might have tender feelings for you and let you die more comfortably. Ha 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 ha. After he finished this sentence, Pharaoh he laughed extremely wretchedly. Towards Pharaoh he's words, Yi Qing Luo didn't notice. Because when Pharaoh he released his profound energy, the evil chi enveloping him started to disperse. Her head started to hurt even more. Originally it was like a thin needle piercing into her head. Now, they had turned into thick needles, stabbing her head with all their might. Her consciousness started to drift. Yi Qing Luo more or less understood the reason why the mastermind of the secluded palace sent Pharaoh He and Si Yenmu into the hall. Perhaps Ah Xian had really rushed over to save her. So the mastermind of the secluded palace could no longer wait patiently to let her lose her consciousness and accept their control. Therefore, he sent Pharaoh He and Si Yenmu into the hall. They wanted to use this to force Yi Qing Luo to take action against the both of them. Once they took action, Yi Qing Luo was about to release her profound energy. Once the dark force was released, the evil Yin Qi would be able to follow Yi Qing Luo's limbs and bones even faster, seeping into her bone marrow and even her profound jade heart. In particular, the bodies of Pharaoh He and Si Yenmu were emitting a strong Yin evil Qi. Even if Yi Qing Luo didn't make a move, Pharaoh He and Si Yenmu made their move. The evil Yin Qi on his body would also follow the attacks of Pharaoh He and Si Yenmu and rush into Yi Qing Luo's body. This plan was indeed well thought out. As expected of a rat that was good at playing despicable tricks in dark corners. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to maintain her consciousness, so that the expression on her face could be controlled. At least in front of Pharaoh Crane. She could not show any difference. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. His eyelashes were wet with sweat. Yi Qing Luo clenched her teeth tightly as she raised her languid and calm eyes to look at Pharaoh He. She didn't hear what Pharaoh He said clearly. Moreover, she no longer had the energy to continue Pharaoh He's words. He just stood there quietly, watching Pharaoh Crane's actions. Compared to retorting back. Chapter 34-33. Pharaoh He's face was extremely unsightly. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were sinister. He raised his hand, flipped his palm, and shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you." As soon as he finished speaking, Pharaoh He's attack had already rushed forward. Carrying a gloomy and evil aura, and after becoming a corpse puppet, his profound strength had skyrocketed. The two combined together. That horrifying energy fluctuation caused the evil aura in the hall to continuously gather. Old Man Sung glanced back and took a look at Yi Qing Luo's current state. His face darkened. He said to Xian Gui, "Protect the girl, I will go meet him." Xian Gui looked at Old Man Sung worriedly. After contracting with Yi Qing Luo, Xian Gui naturally knew that Old Man Sung was just a tool spirit in Yi Qing Luo's hands. The strength of an artifact spirit could only be unleashed by relying on the artifact spirit that was attached to the artifact spirit. As for the artifact spirit itself, even if it left the divine artifact, it could only be considered a spirit body. Just like Yi Qing Luo's current state. He couldn't cooperate with Old Man Song to release the power of the artifact spirit. "Don't worry about me." Old Man Song's figure swayed. The white robe, which seemed to be glowing with white light, turned into an afterimage and met Pharaoh He's attack head-on. Xian Gui was unable to dissuade her and could only quickly return to Yi Qing Luo's side, opened his own turtle shell and protected her behind him. Originally, Xian Gui was very worried about Old Man Song. But after seeing the scene before him, Xian Gui's tense heart finally calmed down. Old Man Song was extremely fast. It was so fast that Pharaoh Crane could not react in time. In just a few breaths of time, Pharaoh He was already firmly controlled by Old Man Song's attacks. Xian Gui was not the only one who was shocked. Even Pharaoh He looked at the white-haired, white-browed old man in disbelief. For an artifact spirit to be able to transform into a physical body and leave the divine artifact it was attached to was already very astonishing. Who would have thought that this artifact spirit would actually possess such formidable strength? Although Old Man Song's movements were still somewhat stiff and uncoordinated. It was as if he hadn't exercised for many years and wasn't used to it yet. However, all of his attacks and counterattacks were so precise that Pharaoh Crane could not parry them. Was this the legendary artifact spirit of a divine artifact? Pharaoh he stared at Old Man Song with greed in his eyes. Even Si Yenmu couldn't help but shift his gaze onto Yi Qing Luo's fingers. Evidently, they took Old Man Song to be the artifact spirit of the blue water divine artifact. Pharaoh he dodged Old Man Song's attack. Looking at Old Man Song's menacing momentum, the more he fought, the fiercer he became. Pharaoh he glanced at Si Yenmu from the corner of his eyes. The two of them exchanged glances. Suddenly, Pharaoh he leaped up. His entire body's evil aura intersected with his Xian energy, emitting a whistling sound of a hurricane. Meanwhile, Si Yenmu moved his feet. His figure speedily shifted towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Si Yenmu's target was not only Yi Qing Luo's life, but also the azure aqua ring on her finger. Bang! There was a loud rumble. Si Yenmu's Xian energy was blocked by Xian Gui's tortoise shell. On top of the tortoise shell, the snake-like creature opened its scarlet mouth, revealing its sharp fangs and bit towards Si Yenmu. At the moment when Xian Gui counterattacked, Si Yenmu had quickly evaded. This movement made Old Man Song aware of Pharaoh he and Si Yenmu's plan. He was just about to turn around and drive Si Yenmu away. Chapter 34-34. Get out of my way. Old Man Song's expression was solemn as he moved his palm. The violent profound energy turned into a chaotic hurricane as it exploded on Pharaoh he's body. The momentum was ferocious, like the firmament of the universe, causing one to sway. Pharaoh he's eyes widened in horror as he had yet to evade. The next moment, he was completely engulfed by that hurricane. At the same time, in one of the palaces outside the palace, a man dressed in a black brocade robe who was meditating suddenly opened his eyes. His inky black pupils were suffused with a cold and treacherous glint. He looked precisely in the direction of the palace. As he squinted his sinister eyes, his entire expression suddenly became gloomy and ruthless. This power. It's him? After Old Man Song broke free from Pharaoh he's attack, he quickly rushed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. But he had barely moved a few steps. He saw Pharaoh he, who was engulfed by his palm, had once again appeared in front of him. Pharaoh he's robe was torn, his hair was disheveled and he looked extremely disheveled. But his face was filled with a crazy grin. You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Originally, he thought that he was dead meat. But under Old Man Song's powerful attack, he didn't feel any pain at all. And he was able to walk out of that palm strike unscathed. I am a corpse puppet. I am an immortal corpse puppet. Pharaoh he opened his arms wide and laughed crazily. Immortal. This made Pharaoh he's eyes more confident. He was no longer afraid of any attack from Old Man Song. He was completely unafraid of death as he once again pounced towards Old Man Song. Being entangled by Pharaoh he who was unafraid of death. Old Man Song wanted to stop Si Yenmu's action but was stopped. The new function unlocked by Pharaoh he made Si Yenmu's battle intent rise. Since he was immortal, what was there to be afraid of about this stinky turtle? The thought of Ah Xiang dying tragically on the battlefield. The butterfly saint technique also said that Ah Xiang was dismembered by Yi Qing Luo's gang of brothers, not even a complete corpse. The hatred in Si Yenmu's eyes gradually grew stronger. He stared deadly at Yi Qing Luo who was leaning against the wall. Suddenly her lips curled upwards as she sneered, ha ha ha. I didn't expect the heroine Yi Qing Luo would also be like a dead dog, lying on the ground. He pointed at Yi Qing Luo as he said word by word, your body, totally can't move right. No wonder, based on your character, you actually allowed Pharaoh he to insult you verbally, and remained unmoved. Ha ha ha. no matter how Si Yenmu mocked and ridiculed him. The girl leaning against the wall still didn't make a sound. He only opened his calm eyes and looked indifferently in the direction where Pharaoh, he and Old Man Song were fighting. Si Yenmu's heart was beating like a drum. He wasn't sure if Yiqing Luo was so arrogant that she didn't put him in her eyes. Or was she really too weak to move, too weak to reply to his mockery? His fists clenched. Just as he was contemplating on how to break through the black tortoise's turtle shell protection, to probe Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, while Pharaoh, he and Old Man Song were fighting, a white light flickered in the hall. Si Yenmu's eyes were stung by the flash. He turned his head and blocked the direction of the white light. But his gaze fell on Yiqing Luo's face. The young girl was still expressionless, facing the white light. There was no change in her eyes. Like a stone statue, without a soul. Soul. Chapter 34-35. Right. Soul. In Yiqing Luo's calm eyes, there was not a trace of spirit and soul. In other words, Yiqing Luo's so-called calmness and indifference were all pretended. Perhaps, she herself was not even conscious, was she? This thought made Si Yenmu's heart surge with ecstasy. He stared at Yiqing Luo, as if the girl in front of him was already a corpse, lying there. And the azure dew ring on the girl's finger seemed to have fallen into his hand. Thinking of this, Si Yenmu at this moment, where was there any fear and dread? Anyway, he was already a corpse puppet. No matter what Xian Gui wanted to do to him, he would be fine. As long as he could kill Yiqing Luo. Not only to avenge Ah Xiang. He could also get all the divine weapons and sacred beasts from Yiqing Luo. Greed made Si Yenmu's eyes burst out a wolf's light. He madly rushed towards Yiqing Luo. Ignoring Xian Gui's hard tortoise shell, the snake-like dragon opened its scarlet mouth and bit his little thing. Si Yenmu's desperate attack method. Even Xian Gui couldn't bear it. After all, Xian Gui's soul had just reunited. And it had just adapted from the human body to the black tortoise's body. Under Si Yenmu's fierce attack, Xian Gui stood firm, his body in front of Yiqing Luo slightly swayed. Suddenly, the snake dragon-like little thing wrapped around his back let out a blood-curdling scream. Si Yenmu didn't know when he broke free from the sharp fangs and grabbed the snake-like dragon's head. The little thing struggled. But its head was strangled and it lost the ability to attack. On the contrary, Si Yenmu, after the successful counterattack, vented all his anger on this little thing. At his fingertips, profound qi condensed. Snake, snake. Xian Gui felt the little thing's pain and anxiously called out its name. The huge tortoise shell opened, trying to cover the little thing in the shell. The unsolved mystery had been solved. The snake-like dragon wrapped around Xian Gui's back was a snake. Si Yenmu seemed to have noticed Xian Gui's action. He suddenly raised his head. His eyes were scarlet and ferocious, and his facial features were distorted. You want to save this beast? Let's see how you're going to save her. Following his words, his profound strength began to skyrocket. The little thing struggled even more painfully. The expression on Si Yenmu's face was filled with madness. Bite me. Bite. Little bastard, I'm going to cut you into. Before he could finish his words, his voice suddenly stopped. Si Yenmu widened his eyes. His throat tightened. A cold hand was strangling his neck. His hand was bone-chilling. It was as if frost was covering his neck. The strength of the 5 fingers gripping his neck made him feel as if he had lost all his strength. Si Yenmu loosened his grip. Snake softly fell on Xian Gui's back. Snake, snake. Xian Gui was worried about the snake on his back, but after seeing the scene in front of him, he was even more worried. Master, you, Si Yenmu's throat tightened and both of his hands twisted his neck. But the more he tried to twist it, the strength of the neck was greater, almost choking him until he couldn't breathe. Yen Mu's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the figure in front of him. The young lady's expression was indifferent, her eyes were still so calm, without any emotion. She just strangled his neck. Chapter 34-36. The strong wind danced wildly. The young lady's flame robe billowed and even the air seemed to be dyed with a circle of blood red. She squinted her eyes, her deep pupils exuded a chilling coldness, and a faint trace of blood light flashed. Want to kill me? Want to take away the vast water artifact? She opened her mouth, and there was a hint of coldness in her voice. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. Yen Mu widened his eyes in fear and trembled all over. His neck was clasped so tightly that he could no longer spit out a word. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her pink lips curled up into a smile, making her beautiful face look like a poppy in full bloom. Even if the corner of her mouth was raised, there was no expression on her face. It was hard to conceal her breathtaking beauty. Under that peerlessly beautiful smile, Yen Mu only felt that smile was like a summon from hell. He couldn't help but tremble all over, the space was indescribable. Yiqing Luo chuckled and lowered her eyes. Her gaze lightly swept over Xian Gui. Immediately, the other hand raised and clasped Yen Mu's right hand which was hanging weakly by his side. Ah, a scream came out from Yen Mu's mouth. Only to see a red light flashed past. Yen Mu's right hand was cut into two. The bright red blended with the splattering blood. His hand fell to the ground and rolled a few times. Yen Mu's body trembled like a sieve, staring at Yiqing Luo with a face full of fear. No, impossible, how could you? He clearly saw that Yiqing Luo's eyes were dull, as if she had lost her soul. Wasn't that the same as what the palace lord said? Yiqing Luo's willpower collapsed. Yiqing Luo would lose consciousness and soul. Let the secluded palace control it? But, how could Yiqing Luo counterattack? Could it be that she deliberately pretended to lose consciousness to lure him into the trap? The most important thing was, he was now a corpse puppet. Undead corpse puppets were not afraid of pain, and they were immortal. But why could he feel the pain? Yen Mu suppressed the speculation in his heart, widened his eyes and looked at the right hand that was chopped off on the ground. No, I am a corpse puppet, I am immortal. However, no matter how Yen Mu brainwashed himself, he wanted to use his will to make the severed hand return to his body. That hand just lay there quietly, without any intention of moving. You used this hand to injure Xian Gui just now. Yiqing Luo calmly opened her mouth. His words were cold and emotionless. Yen Mu's body trembled as fear spread. Immediately after, the young lady's fingertips moved. The glowing flame fan, which was as red as a raging flame, shot out a red light. The red light landed on the half of the palm on the ground. Bang! With a loud explosion, the hand was directly blown to pieces. No! Yen Mu screamed and struggled. However, the word no came out of his mouth. Not a single word came out from his throat. He did not need to breathe at all. But right now, the pain of suffocation was spreading in his chest. Just like in the next moment, he would die from lack of oxygen. And, this hand. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly again. As her cold voice fell, Yen Mu's other wrist was directly chopped off. Once again, it turned into ashes. No matter how Yen Mu begged for mercy, Yiqing Luo did not loosen her hand. Her expression did not change in the slightest. Chapter 34-37. He was like a toy. Watching his limbs being cut off bit by the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands. He had to bear the pain of his body being torn apart. Then, watching the parts that were cut off bit by bit turned into minced meat and splattered in the hall. And he could not die, nor could he faint. He could clearly feel the feeling of every part of his body. He could also clearly see how his body was cut off. This kind of torture was even more painful than letting him die directly. Si Yenmu could not understand. He was already the newest and most complete undead puppet. The other defective and semi-finished products could not feel the pain, impervious to fire and water. Even if they were knocked down to the ground, they could still continue to climb up. Even if their limbs were cut off, they could still use their own bones as weapons. Not to mention this new type of complete corpse puppet. He remembered when he was used as a test subject. After he was cut in half by the people from the secluded palace, the two parts of his body would be reassembled. Why not now? Why couldn't he reassemble now? Master, I am fine, Snake is also fine, don't be angry. Xian Gui comforted Yi Qing Luo in a low voice. Si Yenmu ignored Yi Qing Luo's increasingly pale face because of fear. But Xian Gui saw it clearly. Following Yi Qing Luo's counterattack, more cold sweat seeped out of Yi Qing Luo's forehead. Xian Gui knew that the master was avenging Snake. He struggled to fight with his body. Its duty was to protect the master and not let the master suffer any harm. And not let the master suffer more serious injuries because of it. If Miss knew that it did not protect the master well, Miss would definitely not care about it. Hearing Xian Gui's voice, Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. She took a deep breath to suppress the dull pain in her head and the feeling of being in a trance. She glanced at Si Yenmu, who had fallen on the ground and slowly leaned on Xian Gui's back. The little thing that was called a snake immediately wrapped around her arm and rubbed against it in a fawning manner. Yi Qing Luo closed her eyes. All the counterattacks just now had exhausted all her strength. Especially when he was dealing with Si Yenmu. She could feel the dull pain in her head becoming more and more obvious, making it difficult for her to endure. This was the goal of the person behind the palace of gloomy darkness. If she really killed Si Yenmu, lingering around Si Yenmu's body, shrouding a ball of evil qi, they would all enter her body. She slowly raised her hand. The glowing flame fan at his fingertips flickered with a bright light. A bright red light imprinted in her eyes. Faintly, a wisp of black qi began to linger. She might not be able to hold on much longer. Ah Xian, in her mind, the man's peerlessly handsome face appeared. Master. Xian Gui realized that something was wrong with Yi Qing Luo's mood. He immediately shouted. At this moment, a terrifying energy fluctuation surged within the palace. The sound of something tearing through the air was extremely clear in this palace. In the next instant, Old Man Song and Pharaoh He, who were locked in battle, were suddenly blasted away by a strand of energy. Old Man Song seized the opportunity and speedily returned to Yi Qing Luo's side. One hand clasped Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Lass, wake up. Old Man Song transmitted his own energy into Yi Qing Luo's body. Chapter 34-38. It's really you. A gloomy and sinister voice echoed in the air. It was the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. That person was back again? Ha ha ha. I didn't expect that after waiting for so many years, you're actually here. The gloomy voice let out a creepy laughter. What are you talking about? Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly as her breathing became heavy. Under the transmission of Old Man Song's energy, her state of mind calmed down. But her body was weak and she probably didn't have the energy to fight anymore. The reappearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness made Yi Qing Luo's emotions tensed up. Especially the words of the person behind the scenes, she couldn't understand it. Green ghost. The gloomy voice was mixed with excitement as it spat out two words. Yi Qing Luo felt Old Man Song's body stiffen. Immediately, she heard the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness rang again. I didn't expect that. You've been hiding from me for thousands of years, and finally I still found you. That frightening energy ripple that enveloped the palace was still continuously increasing. The legendary Azure Dew Bracelet Spirit, when she was still alive, you were so arrogant, condescending and supercilious, but now, you're actually reduced to taking care of a girl from the lower realm. That person's mouth was full of ridicule, mixed with a joyful and carefree laughter. Yi Qing Luo looked sideways at Old Man Song and held his hand tightly. Old Man Song, that person was talking about, you? Green Ghost. Was this Old Man Song's real name? The Azure Dew Bracelet Spirit. Who was the she that person was talking about? The previous owner of the Azure Dew Bracelet? This bracelet was rumored to be her Yi family's hidden family, an heirloom passed down from their ancestors. According to the ancestral records, this had the power to destroy the heaven and earth. Otherwise, those Yi family's elders wouldn't have tricked her into going to the Yi family's ancestral grave to dig out the Azure Dew Bracelet. They even risked their lives to snatch the Azure Dew Bracelet. So, the she in that person's mouth was most likely referring to the ancestor of the Yi clan? Her ancestor had once made the Azure Dew Bracelet so glorious? To be able to make Old Man Song look down on everyone and everything? Old Man Song reached out and held her small hand. A low voice entered her ears. Lass, this old man has let you down. His tone was filled with self-blame and helplessness. Even if Old Man Song didn't say it clearly, Yi Qing Luo also understood what Old Man Song's apology was for. Old Man Song was blaming himself. Because of him. Once again, that person was lured over. It was also because of him. The fact that Yi Qing Luo possessed the Azure Dew Bracelet was also exposed. That person was very ambitious. It was so big that it wanted to dominate everything in the world. If that person knew of the existence of the Azure Dew Bracelet, they would definitely think of ways to snatch it. With her current strength. Not to mention guarding the Azure Dew Bracelet. Whether or not he could survive that person's attack was a problem. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. You took action to protect me. She revealed a faint smile towards Old Man Song. Then, he turned his head and looked forward. Because of the appearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. Pharaoh he stood by the side, not daring to move at all. A pair of malicious eyes stared fiercely at Old Man Song who was standing beside Yi Qing Luo. Obviously, he understood Old Man Song's identity. Not the artifact spirit of some Azure Dew artifact. But, the artifact spirit of the legendary Azure Dew Bracelet which made one's heart fill with greed. Only, no matter how many thoughts he had in his heart. But in front of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 34-39. In the darkness, Yi Qing Luo's delicate body suddenly stiffened. Her whole body suddenly felt like it was immersed in an icehouse. The coldness eroded her. Her pupils shrank and the hand holding Old Man Song suddenly tightened. Someone was watching her. It was the person behind the scenes from the Dark Palace. She couldn't sense where that person was in the hall. But she could clearly feel the gaze coming from that person. Yi Qing Luo felt as though that person had seen through her clothes and seen through her very soul. It made her feel uncomfortable all over. The Azure Dew Bracelet is in your hand. A cold voice reverberated in the hall. Yi Qing Luo slightly pursed her lips to keep her consciousness awake. You can run to the lower realm without any scruples. Why can't the Azure Dew Bracelet be in my hand? Her voice paused slightly, her lips curled and revealed a sarcastic smile. I suddenly understand. You are a dignified person with a high status in the upper realm. Why would you go through so much trouble to invade the lower realm? Oh. That person's tone rose and sneered. Although I know you are stalling for time, but I really want to hear what you understand. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath and adjusted her sitting posture with Old Man Song's strength. Immediately, her lips curled up. Your purpose from the beginning to the end is for the Azure Dew Bracelet. You know that the Azure Dew Bracelet is in the Nirvana realm. You want to get it, right? There was a moment of silence in the hall. The silent atmosphere permeated the hall. Si Yen Mu, who was lying on the ground, could not bear such an atmosphere. He cried out in fear, Palace Lord, Palace Lord. Yi Qing Luo is sinister and cunning, don't waste time with her. Her consciousness is no longer clear. As long as Palace Lord personally takes action, you will definitely be able to control. Ah! Si Yenmu's words had not finished. Suddenly, a sinister force like a sharp blade shot straight. It fiercely pierced into Si Yenmu's mouth. All of Si Yenmu's words turned into that miserable scream. Then, he could no longer make any sound. What I want to do, it is not up to you to instruct me. That cold voice sounded. Si Yenmu's entire body was immediately shrouded by a black qi and swallowed. After the black qi dispersed. On the ground, only Si Yenmu's clothes were left. Yiqing Luo witnessed all these and the expression on her face changed slightly. Just a puppet and you can even eat it, your taste is quite heavy. Yiqing Luo, in the lower realm, there's still such an amazing existence like you. It makes this seat, to develop a strong interest towards you. That person's gaze became even more scorching. Yiqing Luo had nowhere to hide. He could only endure the feeling of being stared at. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in you. Ha ha ha. That person laughed. His laughter was still so eerie and terrifying, causing people who heard it to feel their scalps go numb. That laughter lasted for a long time. Yiqing Luo didn't open her mouth to interrupt that person's laughter. When the man stopped laughing, she slowly curled her lips and said, in other words, I guessed right. Yes, you're right. I know that Azure Ghost is in the lower realms, but... The man paused. My purpose in coming to the lower realms isn't just for the Azure Dew bracelet. After that, the man said, even if you're right, so what? Don't tell me you can still stop this seat. I can't stop you. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly, the hand on her finger moved slightly. Chapter 3440. What did you say? That man's tone paused for a moment. Suddenly, he seemed to have felt something. That man cursed silently, damn it. A bunch of trash. Just as he finished his words. The suffocating spiritual pressure that had enveloped the entire hall disappeared in an instant. This aura disappeared extremely quickly. So fast that Old Man Song and Xian Gui had no time to react. Not only that, even the black sinister aura that lingered in the surroundings was gradually dissipating. Bam! The ground suddenly trembled violently. The indestructible palace with no exit, under this tremor, collapsed with a loud crash. Gravel flew and dust curled up. A tall figure stood outside the collapsed stone wall. Purple robe, fluttered along with the strong wind. When a gap appeared in the palace. That figure quickly rushed into the palace. When she saw that figure rushing over, Yiqing Luo's tensed heart finally relaxed. The hand that was covering her fingertips also slowly slid down. The next moment, she felt herself falling into a warm embrace. That embrace, warm and generous. The elegant scent of sandalwood calmed her anxious and uneasy heart. Ah, Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, opened her eyes, looking at the face in front of her. Xian really came. He really rushed over. This man, every time, was like a god descending from the sky, appearing in front of her, protecting her, guarding her. Lil Luo, I'm here, I'm here. Purple robe fluttered, he tightly embraced the young lady in his arms, looking at the young lady's pale face, and the cold sweat that seeped out. His eyes were filled with pity. You caught that person? He is the real mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness, and he already knows. The Azure Dew bracelet, the existence of Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo's little hand grasped Dmo Xian's lapel, trying hard to stay awake as she asked. Dmo Xian grasped her little hand and bent down to kiss her pale lips. No, when I came over, that person had already run away. That Old Man Song. Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened as she turned her head to look at Old Man Song beside her, incomparably worried. Dmo Xian turned her head around and his large palm wiped the cold sweat on her forehead. I'm here, it'll be fine. I'm fine. Old Man Song sighed with a heavy heart. The Azure Dew bracelet will only belong to you. Even if that person wants to forcefully take it, the Azure Dew bracelet will not belong to that person. You don't need to worry. He paused and looked at Dmo Xian. Take good care of her. I'll go back to replenish my energy first. Saying that, he didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo's response. He turned into a wisp of green smoke and entered the Azure Dew bracelet. How could Yi Qing Luo not see the worry on Old Man Song's face, and that expression which was filled with thoughts? Just as he was about to open his mouth to say something, her pink lips were pressed by Dmo Xian's index finger. What you need to do now is to have a good rest and expel the evil yin qi from your body. Don't think about anything else. Dmo Xian's gentle voice seemed to be able to pinch water out. That pair of glistening peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at Yi Qing Luo, bearing the weight of thousands of peach blossom spring water. Yi Qing Luo was once again mesmerized by the handsome man. Don't. This sweet and beautiful moment. However, he was interrupted by the sound of stumbling footsteps. Yi Qing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as she turned her head. Chapter 34-41. Because he was too afraid and terrified. Pharaoh Crane's footsteps were staggering, and occasionally tripped by the gravel beneath his feet. Apparently, he had been badly frightened. Yi Qing Luo's gaze turned towards Pharaoh Crane. Dmo Xian's line of sight also turned over. After that, he stretched out his hand. A shapeless force grabbed Pharaoh Crane's neck and pulled him back. That shapeless force threw Pharaoh Crane to the corner of the palace. Pharaoh Crane's internal organs felt like they had been ruptured as his face twitched in pain. Spare me. Overlord, I beg you to spare me. Pharaoh Crane begged for mercy without any hesitation. In front of absolute power, all his dignity did not exist. He only wanted to live. Earlier when I rushed over, there were quite a number of people from the dark forces among those who obstructed me. Dmo Xian's expression was cold and indifferent. Pharaoh Crane trembled in fear. That is that person's Palace Lord's arrangement. I don't know anything. I don't know. Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly as he suddenly clenched his fingers. A burst of purple profound light enveloped Pharaoh Crane. That profound light was like a ball of burning flame, burning Pharaoh Crane. Pharaoh Crane let out a miserable shriek. Facing Pharaoh Crane's miserable cries, Dmo Xian was not moved at all. You hurt my little Luo, you deserve to die. That purple flame continued to burn Pharaoh Crane. Slowly, he turned into ashes. Dmo Xian adjusted the person in his arms to a comfortable position and immediately strode towards the exit. Yi Qing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe. Xian, I want to see that mural again. She pointed towards the direction of the mural. Dmo Xian carried her and walked towards the mural. When he saw the carving of a human figure on the mural, he was stunned. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly. Ah, Xian. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian. Do you think this person could possibly be my Yi family's ancestor? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and met the young lady's gaze. Why do you say so? Old Man Song said that she is the Empress of Divine Emperors. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly, as her vision returned to the mural. Those surrounding her are vast water god armaments. And, to find the vast water divine weapon and open the enchantment of the vast water divine weapon, only my divine phoenix profound heart jade can do it. I feel that between me and her, there is definitely a connection. He had heard the people behind Abyss Palace mention it before. The previous owner of the Azure Dew bracelet. To be able to make Old Man Song look down on everything and everyone, this meant that the previous master of the Azure Dew bracelet had a status and strength that was above all living things. He then thought about Old Man Song's reaction when he saw the mural. Basically, one could deduce that there was a high possibility that the Divine Emperor's surname was Yi, and he was her ancestor. Dmo Xian didn't say a word and just rubbed her little head. Together with her, they looked at the human-shaped totem carved on the mural. After an unknown period of time. Yiqing Luo retracted her vision and closed her eyes. Immediately, she stretched out her hands and hooked them around Dmo Xian's neck. Forget it, don't think too much about it. When we reach the upper realm and find out about my background, everything will naturally become clear. As soon as he finished speaking, her expression suddenly changed. When she stretched out her hand to hook Dmo Xian's neck, her arm seemed to have brushed against something sticky. Between her nostrils, she could smell a very faint smell of blood. Chapter 34-42. Yiqing Luo's actions weren't considered gentle. But she managed to avoid touching the skin on Dmo Xian's chest. After the front was pulled open, his pectoral muscles were revealed. But at this moment, on his chest, there was a large pool of blood that was shocking to the eye. That was obviously the coagulated blood from the wound. And deliberately used a perfume bag to cover up the smell of blood. Ah Xian, what's going on? Blood, dyed Yiqing Luo's eyes red. She stared at the large wound in a daze. The dull pain in her head, which had finally subsided, once again invaded her brain. Nothing. Dmo Xian closed his lapel again and hugged her to leave. Don't touch the wound. Yiqing Luo didn't even dare to get close to his chest. Thinking of earlier, she nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. She unconsciously touched his wound. Her heart felt uncomfortable, as if it was pricked by a needle. Be good, let's go back first. Dmo Xian slightly withdrew his strength and pulled her body closer to him. I won't hurt. How can it not hurt? I can walk on my own. Xian, put me down, don't touch your wound. Yiqing Luo struggled, trying to get down. Dmo Xian's lips curled slightly. I don't feel pain now. If you move again, it will hurt. Yiqing Luo was so frightened that she didn't dare to move. Dmo Xian carried her and slowly walked out of the hall. Everything around was covered in white fog, making the surrounding buildings look extremely illusory. Every place here, every palace, was filled with nobility and luxury. But Yiqing Luo didn't have the mood to look at the surrounding environment. Her gaze was always fixed on Dmo Xian's face. Looking at the man's peerless elegance, his calm expression. Her heart was in dull pain. How could anyone hurt Xian? Her thoughts kept wandering. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo smelled a strong smell of blood. She was stunned and suddenly regained her senses. She saw she was carried by Dmo Xian, and she didn't know when they had walked to a long flight of stairs. Looking at the stairs, she couldn't see the end. And around the stairs, and above the stairs, corpses that were dripping with blood were lying on the ground. Blood stained the ground. In the air, the smell of blood was very strong. It's still fresh. Obviously, these people had just died not long ago. Yiqing Luo recalled the mastermind of Secluded Darkness Palace. Before Dmo Xian arrived, he said something. Damn it. That bunch of trash. Trash. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled. His gaze swept across the two sides, as well as the small mountain of corpses in front of him. There were at least tens of thousands of people. Moreover, judging from the residual energy in the surroundings, it could be seen that there was still some residual energy in the surroundings. None of these 10,000 people were weak. This was not the Nirvana realm. The strength of the person beside the mastermind was definitely not something that the small fries in the Nirvana realm could compare to. Otherwise, Xian wouldn't have been injured. Her throat suddenly tightened. Xian, these people must be the mastermind behind the Nether Palace, specially arranged here to stop Dmo Xian. That was why that person knew that she was dragging the time, waiting for Dmo Xian to rush over, and because of his curiosity, he allowed her to speak out her own guess. That was because that person had timed everything perfectly. But that person had forgotten about it. Dmo Xian rushed to Yiqing Luo's side. It was because of her, that was why Xian was injured. Chapter 34-43. Then your injury. Yi Qing Luo bit her lower lip lightly as she looked at the chest that was just inches away from her. She didn't even dare to move. She was afraid of touching Dmo Xian's wound. Dmo Xian only smiled. It's all right, it's already over. The most important thing is that you're fine. Yi Qing Luo was touched and her heart ached at the same time. After walking out of the Abyss Palace, Xian Gui returned to Yi Qing Luo's pet space. Dmo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo in his arms as he sat on the back of the nine-tailed fox and rushed towards the East Continent's battlefield. Ah, Xian. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and met with the man's deep pupils. Do you feel that the minute you rushed over to that palace, the mastermind of Secluded Darkness Palace fled the scene, was because they were afraid of your ability, or worried that you would recognize them? Both. Dmo Xian answered as he held her wrist and checked her pulse. You have come to the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Can the East Water Continent hold on? That person. Would he have rushed towards East Continent after escaping? Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped down as her face was filled with worry. I won't. As Dmo Xian said that, he took out a medicinal pill from the profound dragon ring and fed it into Yi Qing Luo's mouth. East Tide Continent has the World Group, and there's also Ghost Marshal and God Thief etc. And, if I didn't guess wrongly, Guiyu, Ghost Doctor etc. should have already rushed over to the battlefield. Hearing their names, Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. If they are around. Just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she suddenly stopped. In his mind, the conversation between the Ghost King and Holy Pirate appeared. She was startled. Master Ghost Doctor, Teacher Guiyu and the others, as well as Ghost Warrior and Saint Thief, actually know each other, right? Yes. Dmo Xian nodded. And Ghost King. Yi Qing Luo recalled the time when she crossed hands with Ghost King, Ghost King's shocking ability. They are not from Nirvana realm. And Dmo Xian nodded again. In fact, from a long time ago. Yi Qing Luo already had this guess in her heart. Whether it was Guiyu or Ghost Doctor. It didn't matter if it was Holy Pirate or Ghost Warrior. There was also Zhou Mo, who was always together with Guiyu. None of them were simple characters. But Yi Qing Luo had never asked about it. Because in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, they were all her mentors and helpful friends, her companions. They didn't want to talk about it. She would not interrogate him. Now from Dmo Xian's mouth, she had gotten a definite answer. Yi Qing Luo didn't continue asking any further. They were here. They would definitely be able to defend the East Water Continent in this battle. Alright, take a rest first. Let the pill disperse the evil yin qi in your body so that you won't be affected by it. I'll wake you up when we reach the East Continent. Following Dmo Xian's gentle and magnetic voice. And his large palm that was gently caressing her back. Or perhaps it was because of the pill he had just swallowed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were heavy as she shut her eyes. She tried to blink again. In the end, he fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown period of time. By the time Yi Qing Luo opened her eyes again, it was quiet all around. The room was completely dark. It should be midnight. She wanted to get up, but she felt that her body was wet. It was like being soaked in water. It was sticky, which made her frown. Suddenly, a cold and deep voice of a young man rang in her ears. Madam, you're awake. This voice. Yi Qing Luo's muddled thoughts gathered. Wind? Chapter 34-44. 2 days and 2 nights. This figure made Yi Qing Luo slightly stunned. It's been 2 days and 2 nights. Ah, Xian guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights. Yi Qing Luo propped herself up. When he stood up, he could even make the sound of splashing water. Yes, Wind replied. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and pressed hard between her brows. After sleeping for a long time, his muddled mind gradually regained a trace of clarity. The memories from before he fell asleep emerged in his mind. She suddenly raised her eyes, her face full of worry. He guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights. Then, his injuries. Have they been treated? No. Ah Feng's voice trembled a little. Since the Overlord carried you back to the room, he has not left your side at all. That fool, Yiqing Luo was touched and her heart ached at the same time. An indescribable feeling spread from the bottom of his heart. Mistress, I have a request. Ah Feng suddenly knelt down. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and spoke in a hoarse voice, speak. She knew that Win's request was definitely related to Dmo Xian. As expected, Feng said seriously, I hope Mistress can persuade the Overlord to have a good rest. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly harder. She lowered her eyelashes and clenched her slender fingers. He could still feel the wetness in his palms. She said, I will. In the darkness, there was silence again. After a long while, Yiqing Luo seemed to have thought of something as her hoarse voice sounded a little ethereal in the quiet room. Have you always been by a Xian's side? Yes, Wind replied. Then you should know. Ah Xian's injuries, how? Came about? Yiqing Luo raised her eyes, searching for Wind's figure in the darkness. Dmo Xian said that it wasn't the people behind the secluded palace who had specially arranged for those people to obstruct him. In that case, it was definitely not those people who injured him. Based on Dmo Xian's strength. Someone who could leave a wound on his chest, simply didn't exist, and Dmo Xian did not want her to know the reason for his injury. Very likely, it was because of her. Ah Feng was silent and did not answer. This meant that Wind indeed knew the reason for Dmo Xian's injury. There was also indirect proof. Dmo Xian's injury was related to her. At the thought of this possibility, Yiqing Luo's heart felt a tugging pain. Ah Feng, a Xian was injured to save me. I have the right to know. Her voice was a little hoarse. Ah Feng was silent again. He seemed to be considering whether he should say it or not. In the end, he still gritted his teeth and said, the geography of the Palace of Darkness is complicated. The map provided by the 3,000 peach blossoms did not clearly depict the interior of the Palace of Darkness. As soon as the Zun arrived at the Palace of Darkness, he was trapped at the entrance by the people of the Palace of Darkness. His Majesty spent a lot of effort to defeat the people from the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and searched for you everywhere, but he still found nothing. Hearing this, Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and caressed the profound phoenix ring on her fingertip. Inside the Palace of Darkness, the Netherworld Dragon Ring and the Netherworld Phoenix Ring had never sensed each other. Until Dmo Xian rushed to the outer perimeter of the palace. Yiqing Luo then felt the subtle connection between the profound Phoenix Ring and the profound Dragon Ring. Moreover, when Dmo Xian had just arrived at the Palace of Seclusion, he was besieged by the human wave tactic. This also meant that the mastermind of the Nether Palace had long known that Dmo Xian was on his way here. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.